And here we go, it's time for the end of the gameplay of the Wonderful 101 as we finish up our wonderful missions. Part of me is going to be sad to see the gameplay of this game end, but another part of me is just ready to move on with my games, because I've basically spent the past few months overfilling myself with wonderful energy. Now, as you can see, this is going to be quite long, mostly because when you get to the hard mode, that stuff takes a while. Like 10 minutes of your time instead of 5. Which is a bit of a pain, but it's more difficult, so that's kind of the point. Now, the thing that I said that I was going to mention in the last part is that on Platinum Games' website, they did an interview with Saul, who is the guy who basically created a load of advanced technique tutorial videos for the Wonderful 101 when it came out. And basically any kind of place that was worth its salt that wanted to say, if you want some help as to how to play Wonderful 101, here's where you go. They pointed towards Saul. Because, I mean, the stuff that he shows off is great. And Platinum Games did an interview with him. Because not only has he done these videos for the Wonderful 101, he also helped out on making the Bayonetta guide. So that very, very beautiful guidebook with the Bayonetta ribbon bookmark, that was in part made by Saul, and he really likes these types of games, and the kind of stuff that he talks about was really interesting, and it kind of really does let you in on kind of probably the best market for this type of game, because the Wonderful 101, if anything, does get compared quite frequently to kind of fighting games. I mean, Saul does it himself in the interview, and in the sense of you have a couple of somewhat complex inputs that you need to learn how to kind of pull off on the fly, and kind of the fact that there are a lot of people these days who don't want to learn how to play games, they just want to be able to play things straight off. And while I am sometimes in that party, like I tried to play Street Fighter 4 and couldn't, and then just got fed up, and it's one of the only games that I have ever returned ever, because I just didn't like it, because I couldn't play it. So there is a aversion to skill-based games in general in the market. So I would say that because of that is why we have the issue of a lot of kind of gamers complaining about games getting dumbed down. It's because kind of a lot of gamers, despite what they may say, don't appear to like anything that requires a challenge. I mean, you do have exceptions to that rule, as in Dark Souls and Ninja Gaiden and so on and so forth, but for the most part, people like their easier games, and that they tend to be the more popular ones, which is slightly depressing, but these things happen, really. But yeah, with the Wonderful One, it's certainly a case of you need to learn it. and you need to kind of learn how it works and figure out the tells to be able to play it effectively. And once you get to that level, the game becomes an incredibly enjoyable experience. Also, I really should not have done what I just did. I should have killed off the Magang immediately, rather than running over to these guys, because as you will see, it's gonna come back to bite me in a little bit. Not completely, but a little bit. That's never fun. Yes, I'm really excited for when the game does start playing Giga Planet Destruction mode, because that is literally probably one of my favourite songs in the game. I wouldn't say it's my favourite, although I do love it to pieces. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. The Magang followed me, damn it. Yeah, because I mean, I would probably say that the Won-stoppable Wonderful 100 is probably my favourite overall. Largely because it's just so insane and so silly, and that's just great and hilarious, and you don't get songs like that anymore in video games. They tend to be very serious. That's another thing that I'm not too much of a fan of with certain modern video games, is that they seem to have lost the desire to be fun. There is it seems like they have this need to be award worthy, and that the narratives have to be like film. And while I am certainly all for complex narratives that are of the same caliber as film and books, video games are not that. They're an interactive medium, and if anything, the gameplay is the primary element of that. And so many games put the gameplay, well, at least seem to put the gameplay on a back foot, in contrast to the story, and it's depressing. There's another thing that Saul brought up in his interview, was that there's been a fundamental shift in how game length is understood. It's now no longer this game will give you this amount of content if you want to do it. It is solely based on how long it will take you to get through the story. It's the game is the X hours long, and while I am guilty of describing games in that manner, I do always at least try to focus on how much content there is outside of just the story. Because, I mean, there are instances where the post-game is much better than the main game itself. I'd say Wonderful 101 is probably one of the games in which your first run through of the game, which is 15 to 20 hours, really shouldn't be your last run through of the game. So really, the game has got a lot of mileage possible in it, because you've got to learn, and you can constantly learn stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure that if people are still playing this game 10 years from now, there will still be stuff to learn from it. It's just one of those games. The same goes for Bayonetta, and hopefully the same will go for Bayonetta 2 as well. I am hoping against hope that game is as wonderful as I hope it's going to be, and that it kind of improves on the original Bayonetta and takes the lessons of what works in the Wonderful 101 and improves the kind of formula further. Because there are certain things that the Wonderful 101 does better than Bayonetta does, as I believe I've said a couple of times before. I've reached the point now in my commentary where I can no longer remember what I said 30 odd parts ago. But it's kind of like the QuickTime event thing in particular is something that the Wonderful 101 gets so right. You're given more than enough time to kind of react, but the amount of time given is not overly ridiculous, so there is still a sense of tension in pulling it off. And I hope that they do something somewhat similar in Bayonetta 2 and don't kind of pull some of the Bayonetta QuickTime events where it's difficult to tell when the game wants you to push the button, and then if you miss it, you get a game over. That's just mean. Ha! We've got the wonderful strains of the Won-stoppable, wonderful, wonderful O coming on now. Oh, this is great. Oh, and very interestingly, they're using the instrumental version. Yes, there is an instrumental version of this song available. So, for anybody wanting to do a karaoke of it, it's available. It's great. Because one of the things that I haven't shown off, but will do kind of, I think it might be one of the last parts of the walkthrough, is that there is a sound test gallery, so essentially exactly as there was in Bayonetta. And it's pretty awesome. Especially in relation to the Won-stoppable, wonderful, wonderful O. As you will see when we get there. And I am really, really, really wanting to sing along right now. Like, the urge to just leap into it is nearly unbearable. The Won-stoppable, wonderful, one-double. Oh, yeah, I screwed that up so badly. It's like I kind of. It's one of the songs that I just want to learn, but then I know that I will be a complete and utter sallow for doing so. Then again, I do tend to learn songs from video games frequently. I mean, even Tobaru Mono from The Last Story, I was all over learning that. And kind of still got little bits of it, even though I don't really understand what it's saying. It's always great. Favourite one for singing it, though, is definitely Simple and Clean. That's always a fun one, as you can probably tell by the fact that I have done it for this channel twice now. Don't worry, my random bouts of singing are probably never going to stop. In fact, it's going to maybe get a little worse, depending on the game. I know for a fact that whenever I eventually do Kingdom Hearts 2, Atlantica's going to be very, very, very tempting. Even with the whole swim this way, we'll dance and we'll play, yeah, it's very easy, come on and just take a chance and shake a pin. Just forget you, heard that. No, I totally don't know the lyrics to that song. No, I was thinking of under the sea, darling, it's better down where it's wetter, take it from me. Up on the shore they work all day, out in the sun they slave away, while we devote full time to floating under the sea. Yeah, but have that in your head rather than the other one. So I've noticed that kind of in hard we are facing off against quite a few Duras. Always fun. I mean, I guess they are probably one of the most difficult standard enemies to defeat purely because you need to use the bomb to really stand a chance of causing any lasting damage on them. And the bomb is probably one of the most difficult regular Unite morphs that you have to pull off. Although even then, it's a really simple shape. It's just the circle and the stick at the end. So I don't really get what some people were going on about with the fact that the shapes are difficult to pull off sometimes, because initially there is a challenge, certainly, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad. I mean, especially when primarily you're going to be using hand and sword. Also, I am loving this combo. This makes me feel like such a badass. Such a complete and utter badass. I have the feeling it's not going to last, however, unfortunately. There it goes. That sucks. I should have just kept Unite more attacking him, and kept it going, but oh well, 'twas not to be. I think this was actually the location where we fought the Tumik, and now we are actually fighting the... Oh no, it's not even a Tumik, it's a Tumike. So I just want to call it a Tumik because of the tiny Tumiks, but these things happen. I wish that could have kind of just stopped them from forming back. That would have been pretty amazing, but I guess I'm not allowed to cheat the thing like that. I am, however, allowed to cheat it by using Sword Cyclone, which looks awesome. Now, I've mentioned it a few times, but obviously I'm not showing it off because I physically can't, but Operation 101 essentially follows this kind of style of gameplay, in that you go through a variety of missions that are all kind of quite hard in terms of the amount of enemies thrown at you and the enemies themselves. If anything, it's basically the lost chapter from Bayonetta. I mean, it's unlocked by exactly the same method as well, all of the Kakuregas, which are essentially the Alfheims. It's just more difficult to get because of having to beat all of the Kakuregas on every single difficulty, because they are all classified as different Kakuregas. And, I mean, they are, because they provide you with different challenges, and the reward is always a different wonderful figure. But it doesn't mean I'm just like, why? Why do you do this to me? Either way, it's time for the final mission of Hard A. We're nearly there. Very, very nearly. Doesn't mean we're not done with very, very long parts. Some of the upcoming ones are quite the lengthy buggers.
Wonderful 101.
And well, you'll see why. Oh, there it is. There it is. Geathjerk Planet Destruction Mode. Oh, this is just beautiful. I've said it before and I will say it again, I am in love with this theme. So much. You just feel so epic when it's playing. It's like nothing can faze you. Everything is going to die at your hands. Because you are the most wonderful people in the world. And no one can bring you down. It's got the same kind of sticking power as the likes of kind of Let It Go and Frozen and Wicket's Defying Gravity. You're just kind of filled with kind of this glee whenever it plays. Or at least I am. I really like my how shall I put it? My songs that kind of make you feel awesome. It's the same kind of effect that happens during the Bayonetta bosses. The massive orchestral music kind of uplifts you and makes everything seem awesome, and then as soon as you get climactic battle, kind of the tension rises and everything feels even more epic, and you just want to kind of win. And this is just one of those songs. I mean, another example would be The Sun Rises in Okami, which is also the final boss theme. The Platinum have got a track record of absolutely phenomenal final boss themes. They really do. Which is another thing that I'm ultra excited about for Bayonetta 2. Especially with, as I mentioned, the competition between the wonderful 101 team and the Bayonetta 2 team. They're trying to one-up each other. Because it's like, if this is what Wonderful 101 did, and Bayonetta 2 team are going to try and one-up that, like, my god. I think my body will not be ready. It seriously will not be ready. And I think I will just, in the end, love every single minute of it. At least I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, the horrible irony would be the game comes out by the time this part is uploaded. I doubt it, but yeah, if it came out and then I was disappointed, I'd be like, no! But I have to say, I am hopeful that any doubts that I have will never appear, because I have faith in Platinum. They've made some arguably average games. I mean, I can't truly praise Mad World and Anarchy Reigns. That they are probably the most flawed of the Platinum library. But they have elements of them which are awesome. And I mean, I guess you could kind of say that a lot of Platinum's library is theoretically phenomenal. I mean, the idea behind Mad World is great. The idea behind Anarchy Reigns is great. The idea behind Vanquish is awesome. Infinite Space 2, Bayonetta, and the wonderful 101. All conceptually, these are all phenomenal games. And I mean, in the case of some of them, they are better than others. Bayonetta, Wonderful 101, and Vanquish, I would argue, are better than the others. I've not played Infinite Space, so I can't really comment on that game, but I've played all the others. But then, it is a taste thing. I am not really a fan of shooters, and I am awful at them. So I didn't enjoy Vanquish as much as I probably could have done, which in turn makes Bayonetta and the Wonderful 101 my favourite Platinum titles. Oh, I've got Rising. That's really bad. But Rising's also excellent. Oh dear. But yeah, I mean, if you take kind of the past 5 years, bloody hell, the past 5 years as kind of a track record, in that time, Platinum have released Bayonetta, I believe Vanquish came after Bayonetta, Anarchy Reigns, Metal Gear Rising, and the Wonderful 101. In that list, you have only got one dud in terms of the game itself. And Anarchy Reigns isn't even that bad. It is just kind of not as well constructed as the others. But I think that's partly down to the genre that it fills. The 3D action brawler means that there's not as much depth in the combat as I have grown accustomed to from Platinum, essentially. But still, like, if there is one developer that I have kind of flat out decided I will follow to whatever console they release their games on, it's Platinum. Maybe kind of a flawed decision, but they haven't let me down yet. Even the games which I would say are arguably not the best they've ever made, I've still enjoyed. So I feel safe in their hands. But we are reaching the end now. We are on Hard B, and this is the last kind of batch of missions that I am going to show you. And rather depressingly, I believe the last one is very, very, very short. Like, ridiculously so. You wouldn't expect it, especially after these other quite lengthy battles, but it's going to surprise you how short it is. So, as we head into the second mission of Hard B, I think I will kind of just detail how the final 5 parts of the extras are going to go down, because that is how many we've got left. Essentially, we are going to cover the Geathjerk files, the wonderful files, the wonderful figures that I've managed to collect, and then we will go into the gallery, which you unlock for completing the game, and show off character files, concept art that's in the game, which is all wonderful. Show off the bottle caps, because kind of avoided showing that screen off because I'd say it's better to show you everything after I've got it rather than how it was before I started all these extra bits. Although I will say that when I finished the game initially, I had developed, well, I'd reached, I believe it was a grand total of about 51 bottle caps. And then after all of the extra stuff, I was up to like 75. I can't remember quite where I finished it. It might have been around 80, which is quite the impressive leap, I would say. And I'm very proud that the only bottle caps that I'm leaving are ones which require higher difficulties, but also a rather insane amount of tedium in relation to certain things like the perform the Ukemi 100 times. Yeah, that one's going to take me a while, I feel, when I eventually sit down to try and get it all. But yeah, once again, I'd say if there's anything missing from kind of like the bonus content of the wonderful 101, keep screwing up the name even now, it would be a theatre mode for the kind of cutscenes that are not just the talking head cutscenes, but the more kind of action-packed ones. However, I'd say it's certainly less kind of an egregious thing to miss than it was in Bayonetta, because so many of the so many of the cutscenes in this game are the talking head cutscenes, where you just have characters having conversations with each other, which is not a bad thing, but it does slow down. Well, it means that there's less of the really action-heavy scenes, which Bayonetta is basically full of, and is kind of entirely comprised of. Now, I am actually quite glad that this thing is here, because it makes my job a hell of a lot easier, because you are kind of, at the right moment, you are kind of high enough that they can never reach you, but low enough to actually be able to hit them. It's great. It's probably incredibly cheap, but I am still very, very thankful that this platform is here. It's just so helpful. Also, the joys of the credits music. It's just wonderful. I really cannot use any other word to describe this game other than wonderful. It really does seem like the only thing that's fitting at any time. It's completely cliche, but I mean, it's exactly kind of like how I would say there's probably only one way to describe Beautiful Joe, and that's beautiful. Although, having never played Beautiful Joe, I can't really comment on its overall quality. I want to play it. I'm kind of wanting to play the entirety of Hideki Kamiya's back catalogue, apart from Resident Evil 2, because horror just isn't my thing at all. But Devil May Cry, Beautiful Joe, I very much want to. But here we go. It's our final mission. And what's our challenge? It's a Dirixon. I believe that's what it's called. And it is just a Dirixon. Which is why this is so short. I would have thought they would have given us a slightly more challenging enemy for the end of the hard mode. Like, hard B in the Wonderful Missions. Like, I don't know, maybe kind of have the Dirixon and then maybe, like, shove a load of Dogus in there. Maybe a Daidogu. I don't know. Kind of, there are a lot of things they could have done to make this final challenge more difficult. But then, even then, this is still one of the most fun enemies in the game to take down. Especially when you kind of pull off the Unite Gun Stinger on it, it's just great. And I believe this is going to be it for the Dirixon. It's dead. And we have finished the Wonderful Missions, which makes me feel like a badass. So, thank you for watching all of the gameplay. Next up, we are going into the files of the Wonderful 101 and really going quite heavily into the lore and the characters. So look forward to that, and I will see you in the next part of the extras.